Trump is like the Death Star. He wields immense power at large scales, but he's vulnerable to a small-scale attack that can set off a chain reaction.
Bullshit. 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 Bullshit.
Bullshit?
The news was dominated this week by President Donald Trump's new $1.7 billion legal settlement fund, which he claims is to compensate victims of political weaponization and lawfare. The thinking behind it was both crystal clear and deeply mysterious. Clear in that it's one of the most naked acts of political corruption in American history. A convicted felon thieving $2 billion of our tax money to shower on a hand-selected cadre of other felons, traitors, and kooks with nothing to recommend them other than fealty to him. Mysterious because it's such an immediate and foreseeable debacle. The flaws in the original lawsuit that led to the fund were obvious. The widespread bipartisan outrage over the idea was predictable. So there's an enigma. What was the plan here? What is Trump really after? After years of writing about Trump and based on my experience in government, I see three real possibilities that I want to lay out here. An obvious explanation, a souped-up second possibility that's more cynical, and a third, more sinister and yet more tantalizing explanation. One that would give some valuable insight into what, with good reason, Trump fears the most. Theory number one is that, since this is, after all, Donald Trump we're talking about, one might search no further than Occam's razor. He's essentially a walking, pathological id who struggles to make coherent plans of any kind. So it could easily be that there never was any scheme or strategy or purpose. Trump's launched ridiculous lawsuits and been rewarded for them before, like ABC, CBS. So like a child spoiled by jumpy parents who give in to every tantrum, that could just be the end of the story. Another good starting point for understanding any Trump action is to assume it's all about grabbing for money. And there's a humdinger of a financial incentive hidden inside this settlement deal. The deal ends forever an IRS audit of Trump's tax returns that's been hanging over his head for years and that could easily have cost him $100 million. Why not simply tell the IRS to quash it? Because that's blatantly against federal law that prohibits executive branch influence over taxpayer audits and other investigations in language so plain, not even Samuel Alito could fudge it. So, under this theory, the $10 billion lawsuit was always a cover meant to obscure the ultimate target of ending the audit. The new settlement fund agreement is like draping Harry Potter's invisibility cloak over what amounts to a secret $100 million payout to Trump. The Trump team may even have factored in the political backlash to the settlement as a lightning rod, a useful, trollish diversion from their real purpose. This would also fit Trump's pattern of behavior of distracting from political scandals by creating even bigger political scandals. Then there's theory number three. To understand this explanation, let me tell you three quick things. First, the combination of the Supreme Court's presidential immunity ruling, the president's pardon power, and Trump's complete corruption of the Department of Justice has wrapped Trump and all of his minions in a protective bubble of freedom from federal prosecution. Second, state laws still apply. If anyone breaks a state law, even in the course of performing federal duties, they can and should be prosecuted. And third, there's a potential to go after Trump's criminality by using the exact same RICO model that prosecutors used in the 1980s to break the New York mafia. You indict the lowest level operatives, you get them to testify against their bosses, you flip those bosses and turn them against the next level up, and so on. Before long, you're at the top. The idea is that Trump is like the Death Star. He wields immense power at large scales, but he's vulnerable to a small-scale attack that can set off a chain reaction. And he's intimately familiar with this kind of vulnerability. His world is New York in the 1970s and 80s. His lawyer and idol was Roy Cohn, a prominent fixer and consigliere for the same New York mob families who were eventually destroyed by RICO prosecutions. We also know that his team actively wields the power of money to try and keep the lowest levels in line. Former Trump White House aide Cassidy Hutchinson testified to how the Trump team leveraged financial pressure and the promise of payouts to keep her from turning. In just the past month, Trump's DOJ has been quietly slipping substantial settlement payoffs to MAGA figures like Mike Flynn and Carter Page, because mafiosos need to show their current foot soldiers that you'll take care of them by taking care of the previous foot soldiers. And all of this leads to the tantalizing possibility that the purpose of the settlement fund is exactly what it looks like. To take care of the last crop of those soldiers and prevent them from turning, and to show the current crop that you're doing so. And I say that's tantalizing because it's also a remarkable admission of weakness. If Trump and his team are so willing to court the kind of outrage that we're now seeing over the settlement fund, and if they're truly motivated by the ability to give out these kinds of payoffs, it shows that they recognize a deep vulnerability. It lights the path for state-level prosecutions to follow. The settlement fund may look like pure brazen corruption, and it is. But if this third theory is right, it's also a map. State prosecutors, opposition researchers, and journalists should be reading this not just as a provocation to outrage, but as the entry point to a maze that says, start here, and that ends with holding this band of criminals accountable.